All right, folks, let's get started. Hope you had a good spring break. I did. That's what's important. The conference in Pittsburgh was great. It feels like I haven't seen you guys in a long time. It's our big one, so it's about 3,000 people, and lots of good food. I've never been to Pittsburgh. Good presentations, good conversations, catching up with friends, getting lost, and everybody's so nice. The streets are sort of not straight. It's an old town, and how many of you guys have been to Pittsburgh? Oh, okay. What do you think about it? Yeah, I thought it was great. It just looks like an old industrial town. And so we're at a hotel downtown. He says the Thai restaurant, my friends and I, a big group of us go to a Thai restaurant wherever this conference is. So this was our Thai tour. And the restaurant they chose was just down the way. I just had to go that way. And I don't guess I went that way. I must have gone that way or something. So I asked 6 different people how to get there. Everybody said, "Oh my God, Helen's Thai Kitchen, it's fantastic. It's over there." And I just go that way, and then it's just blocked. No, I asked somebody else. And then the last person I asked, she was so sweet. She just sort of shrugged, and she said, "I was right across the street, and all my friends are right there in the window to see me do that." So anyway, it was good. It's probably my favorite. And I went to the Warhol Museum and got this. Anybody a Mr. Rogers fan? He's the best, right? My little Post-it notes, there's a little Post-it note sweater. It's a little Post-it note that says little checks you can do. You're special. I like you just the way you are. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? And then little flags with the owl guy and King Friday and the little meow meow kitty. So cute. Anyway, I got this for Donna too because she's a Mr. Rogers fan. I thought she was just gonna flee out of the coffee shop. All right, so a little bit of housekeeping. Midterm project is coming up, and it's not really marked at midterm. I mean, we've already passed midterm. But as you recall, it's a draft of your final project. So I won't go over what that is, but I do want to look at the calendar really quickly. I'm asking you guys to have a draft or a partial draft or whatever it is that you decide will be most useful for you on the 11th. So that's 2 weeks from now. I want us to talk about what form that can take that you think will be most useful to you. I'll come with some ideas about some possibilities, but this is really about what you guys feel like you need. So I'll share some things and we can vote on it, but I'd also like to really hear suggestions from you guys. So if you have any now, I want to take them. If you think that you want to think about it for a few minutes or for a little bit and then get back with us, that would be great. But just to take the temperature, what my thought is that that the midterm project, I don't know, our students, they want to do revision that's really just copy editing, that kind of stuff, right? I do not expect this to be a viable, it could be, but I anticipate, welcome a mess because we can get in there to help you kind of think out ideas before you've actually gotten them down as thoroughly as you want. Really, what I see peer review doing is helping you kind of think through some ideas that might not be on the page or some ideas that might be on the page but might not be communicating what it is that you want them to communicate yet. So the project For those of you guys in here, and those I'm not speaking to in the future, for those of you guys in here, the project doesn't have to stand alone. It can be something that you talk us through to help us understand, you know, this is what I'm trying to do here. See this blank space right here? This is what this will be. See this, you know, icon that seems to just be a place filler? Here's what I see happening. And those of you guys in the future, same kind of thing. You just won't be able to do it orally. You just tell us that on your blog. So you can link to bits or whatever, but somehow package it so that we can see what it is that you are going for, and so that we can be in there to help you with that. Then you'll do some more work on it, and then come to conferences with me. And my job working with you there is to help you further sharpen your ideas. You may have, you know, some open questions. I'm not there to impose my vision on you. I'm there to help you guys, you know, realize whatever vision it is that you have for this project. As I said, I didn't anticipate you guys would just be ready to just jump in full on into the lake of digital humanities. You know, I thought maybe you might want to curate stuff that already exists. No, man, you're like, I want to build something. I want to imagine something. I want to do this big. So I am hella excited about that. That means I'm there to facilitate. The guidelines are still sort of there. Like I want you to write something up in text that helps us understand what it is that you are doing and help situate it within the conversations that we've been having. You know, the what's graphs, maps, trees got to do with it. It might not need to. Are you doing any distant reading? Are you doing close reading? Are you doing a combo of both? Are you doing neither? What inspired this? That version of when you're doing a grant for a digital humanities project, that's what they call an environmental scan. I mean, what's already out there. You've been doing a lot of what's already out there. We'll have some more presentations today. So what is out there that is doing what you want to do, but on a different subject, or is doing what you think that can be done, but it could be doing something more, or whatever. I don't know what's out there. So it should be this text, this essay that can be more informal maybe than an academic piece, but it sort of has the structure of one because you're drawing on source material, you're drawing on digital humanities projects, you're drawing on the articles that you've pulled together, you're drawing on articles that other people may have pulled together. You know, in the Zotero folder are your 20 articles, and all of these folders are open for you guys to go into. So you want to see what Katie's got? Let's start digging around. That's why these are group folders. They're not private. They're hidden. I mean, not hidden. And that's why they did the Tracy and is designed to give yourself as the writer, your future self, a treat. You know, now you know what this article is about, and it's written in your own words, and you can sort of just plop it in there and change it around a little bit if you need to. But it's also a gift to your audience who say, you know what, this is going to be really useful for me as well. So so any of those there, and make it inspired from one another's blogs. Quote from one another's blogs as well. Yeah.
Could we use the paper? I mean, obviously it would be a coherent paper, but could we use the paper part of it to sort of guide the logic of it? Like write a general introduction, and like for mine, like the focus is going to be on kind of like doing something between the books and the games. So there's going to be screenshots if I can catch them. There's going to be diagrams, right? Character trees, stuff I'm going to borrow heavily from other projects that I've seen the way they lay this stuff out. But I don't have programs or the experience.
I gotcha.
Time to do it, but I can draw something up that'll, right, and then I can use the block text and then see figure 1, and then over here is, I can talk.
That's perfect. That's what yes, that's
Okay.
perfect. In something like that, I would suggest you do go ahead and put it online with the because that way you can link to digital projects and so forth. And you know, if it makes more sense, like I've asked you guys to have a separate. And again, these were recommendations based on a vision of you guys that was definitely an underestimated one in a course on digital humanities that is a brand new first round. I mean, it's been offered before, but I don't know that any of you guys have taken it before, but here you go. It's fantastic. All right, so that's your presentation. Here's our final project. Oh yes, startup project plan. Yes. So yeah, lay out this. So that would be laying the groundwork for a new project. If you want to do more than this 1,200 words, and you really think that you need to really have the essay do all the heavy lifting, that's absolutely fine. You'll probably have it be a little bit longer. And yes, absolutely. What I would like you to include, even if you reference them pretty heavily within the text itself, would be a separate area of a few.
Sure.
So
Like
yeah,
screenshots of
is that your, yeah, well, screenshots in the essay, but also a separate area where you have
like even a link to the specific.
right, a little, it's just like an annotated bibliography, like here's the title of it and here's a little blurb so that people can sort of see what world yours is going to exist in.
Okay.
It'll be buried in the, essentially what you're writing is a white paper. That's the genre. And so that'll be in the white paper, which it often is, but then they pluck out bits for people who are just coming doing a drive-by. So yeah, that, and I'd also like you to include the annotated list of things that you think will be most relevant to your specific project. So I would recommend you do that after you've done the paper itself. So that might not be something that you bring to the peer review, and it might not be something you bring to the conference, because that's going to be pretty straightforward. I don't think you're going to need me for that. So what you might bring in your instance, Brian, to peer review would be, I don't know, draft of some parts, outline of other parts, a note to yourself that says, this is where I'm thinking I want it to go.
What the project.
Yeah.
Okay.
And ensuring though throughout, if that you're going to have to situate it within what we've read and situate it within the other stuff. So if it makes more sense for you to sort of explore the possibilities of the project first, and then you're going to go through and situate it in the scholarship after that, then you could bring in just the bare bones plans for your project. And then what you can do with us is kind of, what does this make you think of, kind of thing, or explain your parts, and then we'll say, you know what, that really makes me think of this project that I saw that really seems to, I think, it doesn't do exactly what you're saying, but it does this part of it, so that could be one that you cite. Or what you're doing really reminds me of what Moretti was saying about X. And so though it really works against it, which is great too, that's a reason to cite it. So use us for that then. Or if you, and you wouldn't have to have all the bits drawn. This is kind of like, I don't know, think about it as an art studio kind of workshop. You're showing some versions of what, well, I won't say that yet, but do other people have questions about what they're doing? So what do you guys, yes, go ahead, Gary.
Just real quickly, I think I've got it in my mind. I want to make sure if you'll bear with me, so I'll re-articulate it back and tell me how bad I got it wrong. So, so we're the introduction. So we put together the introduction that has the theories or how we're going to contextualize it, and I see you've got that around 1,200 words or more, and then as we get done with that, then. So that's going to be the paper part, and then we're actually going to present what we think with the project that we'd like to build, and explain that through thoroughly and how that ties into digital humanities. And then okay, and so we don't have to have we don't have to have a whole essay about the project itself, just the introduction, and then present the project, and then finish it up with the citations and links and things like that.
Yes. The project should exist two ways. It should exist on its own without you and the world, and it should exist for us. So the way it might exist out in the world is that you drop your presentation into that website. But for us, you're going to be doing, I think I said about 10 minutes, maybe more. Present to us, if you're thinking of a project that you might build, present to us your vision. That's what you would talk about. Show us, if you can, what you think will be most will be the most original and important about your project. And maybe if you can fit it in within that time, if it makes sense, what will really help you visualize what it is that I'm thinking of doing, something that I saw that really made me think, you know what, I could really do X, is this project, and show this project, somebody else's project, and then explain to us what you're doing that maybe borrows from, differs from, extends, or actually replicates entirely, just with a different subject matter of what's already there. Or here's a digital tool. I'm not going to explain it a whole bunch, but what it does is, this thing about a timeline or something, this way of negotiating a map. And so I thought it would be useful to use this X way. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to work, but it's one that I might explore. So that's the place that you can be at the end of the semester, is not even knowing if the tool that you have read about and thought about is going to be exactly right.
Okay, and then for the peer review, then I could have maybe a draft of the introduction, and then maybe an outline of what my talking points of what the presentation actually would be. Am I getting it right?
Absolutely. If that's it, I want you to bring what you think will be most, that you really would like to be workshopped, that you think would be most helpful in getting workshop, because I don't want us to be workshopping it so late in the process that you don't feel, you're like, whoa, it's done, man. Or maybe it's too early in the process that, you're still working out what you want to say. You really don't have any questions for us. You just need more time. But I think that's the sweet spot. What you're saying is, an intro and an outline. And so there are a few ways we could work that. And I'm just talking right now to the people who are in the room, because it'll have to be done differently for those who aren't here. But what you could do is, one option, and we could actually do a combo platter. One option would be present to us what it is that you're doing, where you are, and what big questions do you have. One of those big questions, other than, does this make sense, might be, I'd really like to do X, but I haven't found exactly a model out there that's doing that. And that's where we can throw in and say, you know what, I saw such and such. It's in Zotero, or I'll put it in Zotero, or all you need to Google is blah, blah, blah. As I was saying to Brian, for me, you might be saying what really inspired this project was that math equation in the front of reading machine. So I explain now. But it may be that what others say, that really makes me think about what so-and-so said about X, and that could be something that we read together, or it could be something that they read alone and reference that to bring it in. So we can bolster the scholarly conversation around it, the environmental scan around it, and we can also help you flesh out so that it's more easily communicated about what it is that you want to do. Or you don't exactly know what you want to do. You're like, here's what I want the impact to be, but I don't know what mechanisms I should use for that. I have some ideas, but none of them are actually right, and we can brainstorm together about how to find a sweet spot. Yes?
I have a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. So where will we put this so everybody can review it?
Okay, thank you for asking about practical details. I was so grateful. Blog, and I'll create, okay, yeah, this is what I'll do. I can't do it here, but I'll do it there. I'll create a folder for the peer review, and just plop it there. And you can, in the various fields that they have, ask questions that you might have. But I mean, again, this is you. Do you guys think that having an opportunity to talk through these details by itself will be helpful? Do you think that it would be more helpful to blog about your project in preparation, speaking to the person who might be peer reviewing, and have us go and respond there? Do you think it would be useful to have both, where you create a blog post and then you share with us a version of that in class? We have 3 hours here, and we can use all of that for this. So we'll just have to think about how to divvy it up. So yeah, Jennifer, what else?
Well, I was going to say some blogs aren't working for me. Like, you have to sign in to people's. Sometimes I try to comment on blogs and I can't. And so
Okay, so that's still happening.
Yeah.
Can you tell me if you run into those? Anybody, if you run into those, if you can email me. I'm running into that some too, and I've contacted the author, and I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but.
And then
yeah.
my last question is about the annotated list. And do you want it like an annotated bibliography where we have it like a works cited, but with like a small description under it, which could,
exactly.
Okay, so like
exactly.
maybe would it be the rhetorical précis actually?
Yep.
Okay, so put that like a paragraph for each source.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then what if all of the 20 entries, what if there are a few that don't really match the project? You want?
Well, it's fine. In fact, you may decide, you know what, really just 5 of these are great, but I love that one over there in Greg's folder, and Tamara's got 2 that I really love. That's why we're sharing these libraries. So yeah, these are working documents. I mean, anytime, I know when your students are doing research too, probably, I think some sources are going to be useful. They seemed interesting, didn't turn out to be useful. But just like, sometimes I have buyer's remorse at the restaurants. This is good, but I really wish I'd ordered that. Same kind of thing with the folders, I think. So we can talk about this more next time, but does anybody have a sense of how they think that they might like this to go? I mean, this is what I'm giving you is a really broad, meandering version of what this can be. But what do you want from this? What have you done with works in progress in your classes that you think might really work well for the sprawling projects that we're trying in here?
I would probably just do it like a mini presentation, like the other person's project that I walked through as best I could, like I was presenting one that I made.
That's a good model. That's a good model. Did you guys hear Brian? He's suggesting that you just sort of treat the presentation of your own project as you did the presentation of somebody else's project. I think that's a great model. All right. Well, I will work on some questions that we might ask together, or we can construct those together. If you have ideas between now and then, I know most of you guys are teachers and have done plenty of revision in different ways for projects that may or may not be paper based. We'll make those decisions and kind of know what the structure is going into we won't know that today, but we'll know that at the end of class next time, and then so you'll know what to prepare and bring in for that following week. It could be that when you do the peer review session, it's really group workshop more, you really would prefer to hide some details from us, so we get the big bang, at the real presentation at the end. I mean, certainly do that if you could, you'd like to do that. But I mean, I'm okay if I've seen the show or a version of the show before, and I can come to the big screening on for final project day. But that's up to you. So yeah, if you have recommendations, let me know between now and then. If you have recommendations in class, let me know now and then. Think about what you really want as you're working through this project. I know you've been working through it in various ways all semester. But bring those requests in, and we'll make sure that we accommodate them. So how many of you guys are working in a group? Okay, not many. Often assign group projects in my classes, and not everybody's had great experiences with group projects. I have had some really amazing collaborative experiences, and I have had some excruciating experiences with collaboration. And in both cases, these are people I knew, that I liked, whose work I admired. But I didn't know going in that, old so-and-so, who I'm co-editing a journal with, is never going to be available, or is always going to do that thing and never do that thing. I never had the experience that some of my friends who have had bad collaborations had. Is not just are they not available, but they'll swoop in and they'll make so many changes to the thing without really even, consulting them. What works when I collaborate, when it really works, it's like magic. I've collaborated with Deborah Mutnick a bunch of times. Don Deborah Odom and I have written before, and we still collaborate. Jess Palchik is working with me and Steve Parks and Deborah Mutnick on a collection that's due on Monday, and it's great. Everybody's got different skill sets. Those of you guys who know Dr. Palchik know that she's super organized, so she's the project manager, and Deb and I are sort of not as great on that sort of thing. She can organize things without it being complicated. Deb and I will complicate it, as you guys have experienced as I try to figure out how to set this course up. So we all have our skill sets. I want to big ideas and that kind of stuff. So when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, it's horrible. And there's no way to know going in. So what I ask my students to do is something that I stole from the very generous world of teachers out in the internet world, is to have, my students just did a group website in my women writers class, and they were able to tell me everybody's grade is separate. And one of the things that I factor into it and to varying degrees, because, you know, people are, well, is I ask them to confidentially rate one another. You know, there's some, tell me what your contributions were, how often did your partners and you meet, what you accomplish, what worked well, because I don't know these things. What difficulties did you encounter, how well do you feel about it overall? And then rate the quality of this person's work. And then anything else you should tell me. So some things where I was told, like, this was the best experience I ever had in my life. I've never, in my whole college experience, I didn't know so-and-so before. She's so quiet, but we just worked so well. And the project that we came up with is just stunning. I'm so proud of us. And I don't know that I could have accomplished this by myself. Another group worked really well as 3, and one of them just wasn't available. It was funny because it wasn't funny. She had a terrible emergency, or she didn't, I don't know. But she was late and wasn't responsive, and they both told me about that. One of the people told me about that in a very frustrated way. One of the people, and the student, I'm not surprised, she is so generous. She was talking about, you know, this at the last minute, so-and-so had an emergency and she wasn't able to get back with us. I can't imagine how hard it must have been. I know that she meant to do X, but she wasn't able to do X, this kind of stuff. So anyway, I just want to know what's going on behind the scenes. So I expect that you're having a good collaboration. I hope you will. Mostly, but it's not always that way. So I just want to know what's going on. Not so that you guys are going to talk crap about one another, because rarely does that happen. But in this case, I heard from 2 people in 2 different ways that one of the people wasn't able to contribute. So, you know, that didn't, when I graded that project, that didn't mean that I gave that student a 0. They were not entirely gone from that. And I'm also in a group project. It's more about the process, product. I mean, I'm not giving raises here. It's fine. It's fine. So anyway, so any questions about that? You'll do that for your peer review and for your final project. Okay, and finally, this is our before next time. I have a little activity I'd like for us to undertake between now and then. Okay, so at this point, we're gonna do a little bit more theory and a little bit more, you know, defining digital humanities. I think it's fun and interesting, and she makes such a compelling argument for why it is problematic that we have no official digital humanities definition. We've been looking at existing digital humanities projects. We're going to keep doing some of that. We've been doing digital humanities theory, the debates of the digital humanities, and so forth. But now we're going to also swing towards more direct applications. So you're doing rhetorical précis on doing digital humanities. And I also want us to play with some digital tools, specifically those that she talks about in the 4th chapter on pedagogical implications, some classroom activities, digital humanities tools that she uses in her classroom to teach post-colonial literature. And they're very exciting and interesting. I do not expect that you guys have read that far. I'm just going to go through it, and I'm going to ask you guys to select and choose what you want to look at. But okay. But a little overview. So we're going to do your presentations on digital humanities projects, including those if you have, if your presentation day has passed, but you didn't get an opportunity to present and you would like to, I would love to open the floor for that. Some of you guys ended up with your presentation day on the day that I was in Pittsburgh. If you want to leave that as is, that's great. If you would like to share that with us today, that's great too. The more examples we see, the better, but we can also find them on Zotero, but it's nice to have them demonstrated live. So we'll do that, and then we're going to shift to our discussion about new digital worlds. I'll begin with an overview of post-colonialism, then the global South, and in opposition to the global North, and then some examples of post-colonial digital humanities, many of which she talked about, but I want to kind of unpack why those are examples of post-colonial digital humanities, what kinds of arguments she's making about representation and the limits of representation and the job of post-colonial digital humanities and the colonizing tendency of digital humanities more specifically, and so forth. But before we do any of that, let's get practical. So before next time, what I'd like you guys to do is take a look at chapter 4. She describes a number of digital tools with a bunch of possibilities for teaching humanities content. I'll share with you guys what she does with them, and I want you guys to be thinking as I share with you guys which one seems kind of cool, because I want you to try it out, and I want you guys to set your timer, because a couple of things. I'll pick one. Here's some things I'd like you to do. You're going to blog about it, and you're also going to tell us about your experience if you're going to be here in class. If you end up with a digital humanities tool, I haven't played with most of these, but if you end up with a digital humanities tool that isn't free, drop it like a hot rock and pick something else up, even if it's already been chosen. And set a timer for an hour or less. You can spend more time if you want to, but just like most anything in the internet, it's you can jump down a rabbit hole and never come up. This is not something I want you guys to spend tons of time in. This is a sandbox activity. You know that term? It's a term that's used in technical circles, where you play with a tool in a low stakes context. So like a sandbox, anything you build there can be temporary because it's just made out of sand. It's a mess in there. It's play necessarily. You can play with content. You can play with the tools themselves. My brother stuck his crane in it, and I stuck my Easy Bake Oven in it. Neither one of those went well. And the cat used it as a litter box. Hopefully none of those things will be happening to your sandbox. But anyway, that's just playtime. So before I talk about what you might do with them, let me give you a little overview. We're all kind of for a breath right now. Anybody have any questions? Anybody get a chance to read the pedagogy chapter?
Or I didn't get that far.
No, it's at the end. We won't finish till next time. So, okay, on page 98, she talks about a tool called Voyant. She's got such cool assignments in here, guys. Is that where it is? Yeah. It's the first full paragraph. She says that while textual analysis is at the heart of the methodologies commonly deployed in literature classrooms, computer-aided technical analysis offers the possibility of engaging with text in new ways. As Stefan Sinclair and Jeffrey Rockwell argue, tools that assist with textual analysis afford opportunities that are not practically achievable by close reading. Does that sound familiar? Alone. Searching large text quickly, sound familiar, conducting complex searches, and so on. While there are a number of approaches to qualitative analysis, Sinclair and Rockwell developed the open source textual analysis tool, Voyant, and there's a link to it here. I won't go to it because whoever selects that should just play with it. This is the kind of thing you do with it. Check it out, see what it does.
It provides a web-based reading environment for electronic text that is relatively easy for students to use to explore this form of analysis. You can upload or copy and paste a corpus, that is a big chunk of text. You might use, if you don't have something that you really want to play with readily available, and there's, Project Gutenberg, a bunch of books on the web everywhere. There are a lot of repositories of, as you know, text that they can play with, cut and paste. And what this will do is this will spit out lists of frequently used words, like several of the examples, like the reading machines examples that we saw, like the Moretti examples that we saw. And she suggests that students can do a couple of different things with those. They can look at that list of words and note themes that recur in them. This is sort of, this is what they did in our text here. Or they could come up with themes beforehand they see emerging through a close reading of the text, and then do this analysis of the text pushed through the reading machine, and then see how that sorts out. So there's that option. And then this Google Books Ngram Viewer, that's a popular one. This is at the page, bottom of page 99. Another way to use textual analysis when teaching post-colonial studies is to introduce students to distant reading through Google Books Ngram Viewer. It charts the frequency of words in short sentences through counts of yearly units, or Ngrams, graphs, in print sources between 1800 and 2012. While there are a number of limitations to this tool, the data set is limited to text available in Google Books. The OCR may not be entirely accurate. The text may be incredibly or inaccurately dated. It does offer interesting perspective on language that arguments, readings of post-colonial texts. There's somebody who argues that it offers really great insight into cultural change over time. That's graphs, maps, trees that we see, but we can do it through a post-colonial lens. And she has some examples of how that's worked. Okay, Wakelet on page 104 and 5. It's the last paragraph that starts on page 104. The application Wakelet provides a medium through which students can draw on social media to assemble a multimodal text that incorporates text, video, and links. So YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and websites, and you can build an essay out of that. She suggests using it a couple of ways. One could be that they follow the social media of an existing author who's alive. I mean, they don't exist, but of one that's alive, and some of them are really active on, like Salman Rushdie is really active on Twitter. Or she's got some other suggestions for how to play with this. She says, to investigate and analyze a writer's social media, use these considering the intersections of the paratext. Those are these small texts that come from multimedia with their published writings, so bringing those together. Students can arrange, rearrange, and annotate the sources they add and generate their own text to guide readers through their analysis of a post-colonial writer's social media presence. When you're playing with these, I'm not asking you that you do any of these things. I'm asking that you think about them as you're playing with them in terms of, it's up to you how you go about what you want to say about them. But in your blog post and what you tell us, think about, ease of use. Was it easy for me to use? Does it seem like there's a big learning curve? What about, would I teach this? I mean, would it be really hard to teach? Is it going to be really hard for my students to access? Was my overall experience pretty good? Did I enjoy it? Did I think that the results I got were interesting or worth using? What's possible in terms of maybe your own research, if that comes to mind, or in terms of teaching? She's got some suggestions for how she uses it. What other possibilities are? Maybe you're teaching, we've got a novel coming up getting ready to teach. We're doing Persepolis right now, which can't be done with those. It's a graphic novel, so we can't do the count the frequency of the things. But is there something that you're teaching that you think might be well, that this would serve well? And And give it some stars. 0 has no merit. 5 stars, it's a game changer. So you don't have to do any sign, just noodle with it. This one is interesting. There's a couple of this is on page 105. There are sites that generate fake social media posts and networks. Any of you guys use those? Fakebook, for example? I've heard of it, but I've never played with it. I also forgot to say, several of these things that I'm talking about, you guys probably have done a version of in your class, and you may have other things that may be concepts like a timeline. She doesn't offer a tool for that, but there are a lot of tools for that, or other tools that you think are really useful. So Fakebook, the way she suggests using it is that students could be assigned a character whose social media presence they must develop. In doing so, the class could create a social network for the novels, visualizing relationships between the characters, so we can see those links, which is another visualization. Social network analysis, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, they can, doing so, they can represent networks in text that could be used to investigate the circles in which each character travels. I don't know if you remember the Republic of Letters that I showed you guys the first day of class, that was looking at the way the letters circulated and to whom. The same kind of thing, who's friends with whom. If we take these books and put them together, who's buddies with whom, and who's pretty isolated, doesn't have a lot of friends, and what can we make of that? Okay, timeline on page 105. She doesn't suggest a particular tool for timelines, but she does have some things that she does with it. And this here's a tool for timeline that is suggested, and play with that if you want to. So she suggests that she's looking at post-colonial text, so there's a lot of overlapping complex histories that challenge doing this kind of work. So, they can do some, she says, they can be assigned years for which they're required to select points to mark on a timeline, write a summary of the historical event, and choose an appropriate image to accompany each point. So, again, for example, we're doing Persepolis right now, and it's a lot of unfamiliar history because, what do they know about the Iranian Revolution in 1979? Many of them weren't born yet. Most of them weren't born. Probably all of them weren't born yet. So that kind of can help situate that. And this is a timeline generator that you can use for that. Anybody use timelines in their classes? Okay, maps. We've talked a lot about what maps can do. She doesn't have any suggestions for maps, but I found 2, Tableau and Google My Maps. There's a link here that has links to both of those, but it also compares and contrasts the two. So I've got a couple spots to pick those. So so pick one, and then somebody else can pick another, because we've got a couple to play with, and I don't know which ones are better. So Google
Dr.
My
Carter?
Maps is one. Yeah.
Sorry, I could never unmute my microphone fast enough to jump in there.
I will come up with her breath. Sorry.
No, it took me a minute to get my microphone unmuted. I use timelines, even though I teach literature, but if I need my students to understand what was going on at the time of the piece that was written, I use timelines frequently just to help my students make those connections. Especially for freshmen, it's actually one of the teats for them to make historical connections, and so those timelines really help. And I've had them do interactive timelines before, especially when I taught juniors. But I thought it was fascinating when she was talking about Fakebook, because, well, I'm a little older, and so I did Fakebook pages long before they were ever, that was actually a digital thing. Facebook was out, but my students would make Fakebook posters.
Neat.
It's just so they could explore characterization, and so who would post what on whose page, and it helped them see just character analysis and character traits. So I think that's funny that she talked about it. I didn't even know there was an app for it now, or a website for Fakebook.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing that for years on Poster, which of course now the students laugh because they tell me, Miss George, Facebook is for old people. And I'm like, well, baby, I'm old.
I know it. Me too. Well, those are the kinds of things that I'd love for you guys to bring in. You know, like I really have been using an analog version, which it sounds like you have, of this kind of thing. And here's what really works. And here, I think that this digital tool is going to be able to do this better, or it's worse. I don't know. Or maybe it allows me to, maybe I don't want to use that tool, but it does help me think about this new way that I can use my, poster board fake book. That's a very neat assignment.
Yeah, I like, nope, there it goes. I like the idea of Facebook, and then especially now with Instagram and Twitter. So if I can just go ahead and snag fake book before somebody else jumps in, because I would really like to explore that. Like, how could we do like a fake Instagram for the students to make those connections?
Absolutely. I forgot to tell you guys about how to vote. Email me your top choices. Those of you guys who are in here and don't have access to a computer, write them up. All right. She's got some fascinating ways of using Wikipedia and some really nice hello. Some really nice recommendations about how to get yourself eased in. Come up with a pseudonym they suggest, and then sneak into an existing page she suggests, and make small edits first, just like copy edits, so that they know, oh yeah, she's okay. And then as you start to make some revisions, save frequently so that it's harder for them to delete check texts that have to go to multiple places. So yes, Jennifer, what's up?
My son we went to a Moody Gardens, one of those nature, omni movies where it's factual information. It was about backyards and how there's animals in the forest behind your house that you don't know about, and there's a raccoon in it, and he thought it would be funny to go on IMDb and say that's the same raccoon from the cartoon Over the Hedge. So he actually changed IMDb. This is like a year ago, and you can still go see that on IMDb about that movie, that live raccoon is the same one from the cartoon. And he is so proud of himself. So he's done.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's something that Stephen Colbert would. Anybody watch the Colbert Report? And that was something he would do all the time. And people would just go and create new Wikipedia entries for like pretend animals, and they see how long that would stay. I love that that's still there. That means that the verification mechanism that they have for IMDb is much less active than the one that is on Wikipedia. But something that she raises, and as I talk about post-colonialism, I think it'll become really clear. One of the reasons why she has them do Wikipedia is because, for a couple of reasons. One, they, according to their stats, it's the people writing these entries are largely white, college-educated, 30-year-old men. And there are a lot of missing entries, and there's also some, maybe celebrations of aspects of stories that also need other points because there might be some oppression involved, that kind of stuff. But she also points out the ways in which Wikipedia decides to cut or keep text is based on a very squishy, kind of complicated, politically concept of verification. And which sources get verified depends on some very traditional ways of looking at text, which we can think about when we're thinking about how Jones talked about writing. I mean, the print is king, and there are a lot of problems with that. So, editing Wikipedia, putting a raccoon in Over the Edge. Okay, this social annotation is that all she's? Wakelet. Wikipedia, yeah. This social annotation, it's a wild card. It's not described in the book, but it's an interesting one. There's a link to it on this page that University of Texas at Arlington put together. There are a bunch of tools there. And I've linked to that page here, DH tools, additional tools. So if there are other things that you want to play with that you don't see here. But the social annotation is ways to take social media and annotate them. And there's a really useful article linked to that about 10 ways teachers can use social annotation. So go ahead and I feel a little American Idol up here. Go ahead and send in your votes. And I'll compile those over the break. Yeah.
This, the first one you talked about, Buoyant.
Yeah.
Does it care what format it's in?
Apparently, as long as you can cut and paste, it's good.
Huh.
So I would like to get as much coverage as we can. If it turns out that you don't get something that you really, really want, tell you what you want, what you really Now I dare you to get that out of your head. Then you can just sort of, throw one cheek in on the one that you selected. Just kind of play with it enough that we know that you've put your hands on it, and then go jump over to the thing you really want to play with and go play with that. It's not necessary for you guys to spend tons of time with this. It's just enough to say 5 stars, 0 stars. This is your Amazon review. Do you know that you can go on Amazon and find Amazon reviews of bread and milk and eggs? They're like little poems. It's really interesting. Some kind of weird art project. All right, anything else? Oh yeah, maybe there's a tool that you read about in doing digital humanities that you'd really like to try instead. That's totally up to you.
So just to clarify, we're emailing you our top 3 choices.
Yes, email me your top 3 choices.
Okay.
All right, folks. So we have Daniel has Buoyant, Brian has the Ngram Viewer, Katie has Wakelet, Tamara's got Fakebook, Bob, you've got Tableau, Jennifer, Google My Maps, Abigail, editing Wikipedia, and Greg on social annotation. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what you guys do with that. And like I said, feel free to toy with other things, but
And that's for next week?
for next week,
Okay.
yeah. So blog about it and then just tell us about it. Those of you guys who are watching this in the future, we have several open slots. Just email me and tell me your top 3 and I'll place you. If you, and we can do some duplication if you want. I mean, maybe these others are just not sexy enough to be worth talking about. That's fine too, but I think we've got some good coverage already. All right, so let's get back to the agenda. All right, we've got some presentations, and it looks like nobody here has presentations. Let's start with the rhetorical précis then, and then we'll come back to the digital humanities projects.
Dr. Carter,
Yeah.
my presentation from when you were in Pittsburgh is on. I mean, we can just leave it for people to watch at their leisure.
No. I want to do those too. Let me go ahead and put those on the list. Thank you for that. So tomorrow, who else is willing to present? Who has it ready? And
I have mine ready. I sent you a link to the Google Doc.
Okay. So if you want to, go ahead and can you put that in this folder too, so that I can just get to it from here?
Sure. Which folder?
This one right here, DH projects. Share your DH project presentation here, and then I'll just grab it from there. Thank you. Well, why don't we go ahead and start with Tamara then?
So I stumbled across this digital humanities project, and at first the title caught my attention. So I clicked on it, and then when I started clicking on each little tab, I just really became fascinated. Maybe one reason I was so fascinated is because my undergraduate studies was history. So my Bachelor of Science is actually in history, and my minor was in English. So I clicked on it and just fell in love with everything that I saw. And I know for sure that I would have been more in love with history as an undergrad student if this had been available. When you click on it, it has different maps. So electing the House of Representatives, renewing inequality through family displacements, more inequality specifically with the New Deal, the executive abroad, forced migration, overland trails, so many different topics to choose from. What I really like about this project is that each map, it gives you an introduction, and then it gives you a tutorial of how to use that specific map. So in this one, it says if you toggle between the two visualizations, you can see the shape and size of the winner of each district. You can see the comparisons. If you click on this section of it, you can use the legend to turn parties on and off so you can see where they were flipped and which party was more prevalent in winning or in voter turnouts. You can see the comparative data to which the voting trends from year to year. And then this is, I think on this map, my favorite, the timeline. So let's go ahead and go into the map. So this is what this particular one looks like. And so it's electing the House of Representatives. And so it's showing you every 2 years the trend. For 2016, you can clearly see the blues and the reds. You can see the areas that did not have a high voter turnout at all. If we go down to the legend, we can clearly see which ones were flipped. And we can see there's not much flipping going on in 2016. And then if you really want to focus on which ones were Democrat versus Republican, you can clearly see the trend in 2016 was Republican. And here's what I said, my favorite aspect of this particular map is the timeline. And so you can see 241 Republican to 194 Democrats. But if I move it to, let's say, 1972, you have that election, 239 Democrat to 195. Now, I still have it clicked on Republican, so if we click on Democrat, I think that's absolutely fascinating that Texas is predominantly Democrat in 1972, where in 2016, it's red. You can go down and clearly see those trends, and in 1868, not much of a voter turnout at all. Well, comparative to 2016. If we go back and take a look at another map, I'm really curious about urbanization, inequalities. Specifically, I work at a high needs school that's an inner city school, and so we have a lot of home unstable students. And so this urbanization just fascinates me. And so here on how to use the map, I can see that we can see where families were displaced by urban renewal. We can see different projects that were going on for poverty and race. And it just gives me a better idea that this is not a new concept. It's not a new struggle. We have had inequalities specifically with inner city and urbanization for decades, which saddens me and fascinates me all at the same time. So again, if I go into the map, I can see just specifics of what regions might have faced this more. I can look at New York specifically, and I can click into the map and go further in and just really get an overview of maybe why and what elements were causing this inequality and the displacements. If I click down here, it's going to give me more information. So it says by the late 1960s, 64 families have been displaced. 0% were families of color. And so I'm wondering, was that the families of color moving into that region displacing others because they were moving out, or was it building And so raises more questions sometimes than it answers, but it's still fascinating and would give maybe a springboard into other research. If I click on poverty and race, it's going to tell me the demographics. So just fascinating. And I'm wondering, had I had this in undergrad studies, maybe my focus might have shifted a little bit more and had a better lens into some of my research and my studies. So this map, if I click into it, is giving me more inequality, but it's specifically at the New Deal time era. And so it does connect to the other map in general. I can zoom out, I can zoom in, and so I can really focus what I'm looking for. I can see in Birmingham the inequalities, in Montgomery, and of course, if we think New Deal era, that's really what am I trying to say? Not even it's dealing with that civil rights time period and that civil rights movement. And so, of course, that's where some of our civil rights leaders were based and framed. They do say that they're still working on the Digital Humanities Project. And so they're adding more urban renewal maps. They're looking at post-war America. They're still looking at presidential voting. And so maybe this is a Digital Humanities Project that's going to keep building and building and give us a better view of the historical trends in America. Very fascinating.
Do folks have questions or comments?
Is that's linked, right? I can
Yeah.
get it because that's going to cause problems later. That was great.
It's pretty extraordinary, huh?
Yeah.
What do you like about it?
Well, I was thinking about as soon as she said about urban, and I just thought of Stephen Crane. And like Maggie drove the streets and that era in American literature and trying to match like the descriptions of fictionalized places with real places.
Nice.
So that's what I'm going to probably do with that.
That's nice. Yeah. Anybody else?
Because I don't want to know what it was really like. I want to put it with the fiction that I like.
Yeah. Yeah. She, well, we'll talk about that when we get to this book. I don't want to get all ahead of myself. It's gorgeous. And I love that, one of the things that is most complicated, I think, with digital humanities projects is the complexity of reading as a cultural activity. I mean, we're trained to read in certain ways. Well, I know how to read this, but what the hell am I supposed to do with this digital humanities project? I mean, that's one of the problems with ours. And people didn't say that, but I said that. This is like how we're supposed to do this. That was so useful. This is how to read it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's brilliant.
I also like that it's kind of a jumping off point for, like, you can see those trends and you may not know, the history behind why that is, but it gives you an opportunity to say, that's weird that flipped. I wonder why. And you can go to that. It gives you a timeline, like, oh, I need to start here in my research and figure out, well, why is that so at that time? And it kind of gives you like a jumping off point to start looking into those things.
Exactly. I mean, we can find research projects in here. That's I think, related to some of the things that people have been saying that we've been reading about digital humanities projects more generally, that when that not only do they communicate information to us in ways that can't be communicated exactly on the page, they help raise questions for us that we didn't know we had until we saw this data in this weird way. Whoa, that's weird. Why the hell is that happening? So yeah, absolutely. Well, and I also love, it's an atlas, so I guess it's as broad as it needs to be. If it's about America, they can do an interactive map. That's an endless opportunity for building.
And all those blank spaces are fascinating to me that aren't either cut, like there's no dot there. Why is there no dot? Is it a population issue?
Well, it's pretty low population
They should
here.
have enough to have all represent. Why don't they have anybody?
Yeah.
That's one thing that just jumped out at me is like, why is it empty? Why is it blank? I mean,
Yeah.
there are people who live there, so why?
It's gotta be
why
somebody. If it's one human person, then that's the representative. They've got to be in a part.
nothing? Right.
Voter disenfranchisement, when it's
Yes.
difficult to know.
So many
Disinterest.
questions.
No, I mean, but it's pretty clear that something's wrong. Something's wrong. All right. So, Peter, do we have yours up here? Oops. Okay, so here it is. Do you want to walk us through?
This is an adaptation from Genius.com, which I think I mentioned that website one time before. It is a kind of an open source website where people post open source texts, everything from The Great Gatsby and older literature to and stories to more modern lyrics. And then people, pretty much anyone, because it's a wiki type of website, you can just go in and add comments, questions, and you can interact with the comments and questions that other people have made there. This is based on a story called The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And I kind of took it and adapted it that I can use with my AP literature students. And what you see here is the whole text of the story. So 14 pages, a document that I could share with students. I could also share with colleagues if I wanted to say, look, here's some questions that I've asked, and what would you add? What would you change? So it works well in professional development settings as well as in the classroom. And then there are 4 types of devices. The ones that are yellow are based on tone. The ones that are magenta would be based on thematic questions. Kind of the purple would be syntax level devices, and then green is kind of a catch-all with everything else. Kind of words that mean something different now in our own time than they did back then. Just kind of random questions that students have asked, and I've taught the story before, and that sort of thing. When you go back to if you go to the website Genius and you want to search for, you can search for myths, you can search for plays. Most of Shakespeare's works are up there, and it's a valuable resource, not just to share with kids, but we have a new teacher to pre-AP at my school, and she was worried about how she was going to teach Romeo and Juliet to her students and get them to be interested in it. And I told her, well, the story is going to interest them, but try this, and that way they'll have a chance to interact with the text. They're more likely to read it this way than if you hand it out in a book. And she found that she was able to get them to read the whole play instead of just the excerpts in the textbook. And so it really worked well for her.
Excellent. Okay, responses, ideas?
Peter, I love this. What was the name of the website?
The idea, it's called Genius.com.
Okay. I love that. So you said doing this, that teacher was able to get them to read all of Romeo and Juliet.
Well, not 100%, but it was a lot higher than
In the excerpts.
Prior teachers have had in years past, trying to get them to read the whole book, going through that. Sharing the link through, and kids would read it on their phones and interact with it that way. And so she got a lot more buy-in.
Nice. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, so is this still what you are thinking about doing for your midterm and final project, Peter?
I'm conceiving something larger than just a short story. One of the novels that we teach is The Handmaid's Tale, and I'm looking at. I doubt that I would have the whole book ready by that time, but I would think several chapters as well as integrating some content from the show that's on Hulu.
Mhm. Okay.
So
That's
kind of getting a little bit more robust as far as as far as integrating video content as well.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
They're
That's.
doing a graphic novel now.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, I saw an advertisement for it. It's not obviously
Yeah.
out yet, but I'm one of the million.
Did you hear that, Brian?
I
Not
didn't
Brian.
hear
Did you hear that, Peter? That's Brian
They're
talking.
doing a
Okay.
handmade scale graphic novel.
Oh, okay.
I don't know when it's coming out. It's just one of the million emails I get from book-related sites that had an advertisement for it. So hopefully that'll be out soon. That'd be an interesting way to integrate, because it's between a movie and a straight-ahead text, a graphic novel. Because if you know what I mean, it's easier to get people engaged with something that's dense or challenging if there's like a storyboard, like panels in a comic. I think.
Yeah, well, those can be complicated to read too, but you're
Sure.
right. It is less intimidating.
I'm glad to see your work in progress. For the digital humanities presentations, the plan was for you guys to present to us digital humanities projects that you didn't create but that exist out in the world. And I'm glad that you've already started on this. I'm glad you shared this with us. I'm glad to hear that you're going to be doing something bigger. That's really interesting too. I say that to get to this question. With your final project, and this is just something, I'm just saying this not to you, Peter, necessarily. I'm sort of saying it to the room because I think it'll be a useful exercise for us to think about. With the final project, you're going to need to situate it within an environmental scan of the digital humanities projects that exist, those that inform yours, those that offer tools. Now you've mentioned this Genius site. That's definitely one digital humanities project. Can you what would you include in part of your environmental scan that helps inform what you want to do with your final project? What's out there? What digital humanities projects are out there that you think are that are doing something like this? I don't know of any. So.
Well, I hadn't seen any that interacted the video with the text, and that was why I wanted to move in that direction, because the students that I teach are so video driven that when you read a novel, even with AP students, it's like on some level for a lot of them it's not real until they see Gatsby's not real until they see Leonardo DiCaprio. And
no, that's true.
And I have looked for other things like that, and that was one reason I was moving more in that direction. But if there needs to be, if you'd like me to come back next week and I can show Genius, and we can, and if that would be better for what you want.
No, this is good. I'm glad you did this. I'm glad we got to see it. I was just putting it out there to that for your final projects, it's really important that we situate them within. So one thing I think that you could do, because I agree that including video content is really important, do a Google search and see if there's a digital humanities project on The Great Gatsby, for example. And there are a lot of them that, there are a lot of digital humanities tools for teaching literature that are really rich, that make use of multiple modes, that make use of video excerpts that put timelines on them and so forth. What I think is unique about this is you're using a pretty standard, very widely available tool, Google Docs, and you're doing it in a new interactive way. I think that's really interesting. So anyway, as you guys since you've seen what his project is in progress, as you guys are looking out there, see if you see something that you think might inform, this project too. Yeah. Even
just on a very rudimentary level, the way you hyperlink names to projects could be a way to hyperlink something to a video clip, maybe on YouTube,
That's an
as
idea.
a way to expand this to include, if there's not one that does it better, like if you wanted to just, a quick way to represent what the project would look like, you could link, you have a word linked to a video clip. Might be a way to start.
Yeah. What do you think, Peter?
That's a good idea. We one of the challenges of being in inner city Dallas is that there are days when YouTube works and there are days when YouTube doesn't work. And so, and that's certainly something to think about. So I appreciate that.
Excellent. Well, well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. If we run into digital humanities projects that deal with yellow wallpaper, then let's keep sharing with one another digital humanities projects that are out there, because I want you guys doing something unique, but I definitely want you doing something that shows a real understanding of the really cool stuff that's out there. It may not be any of it right, but what's out there that's cool, that even if you'd never bring it into your classroom, you think, I think that's pretty. It could also be, I love that you're bringing up the material realities of teaching, Peter. You're right. I mean, this project, this very cool project that I just saw, this digital humanities project, I'd love to use it in my classroom. Those computers are too old. It won't run it. So, I think that those are details. Those are things that RISM would talk about as well. They're not thinking about in the digital humanities. Is the lack of access to the tools that we need to do the cool things that we want to do. So excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Hey, okay, so this is Lonnie Kinsey, and I am not saying that I necessarily believe in ghosts or don't believe in them, but I do think that there are definitely things about our world that we don't understand and that we don't know everything about. And so I found this site, and I thought it was interesting for several reasons. One, it says right here, it's a humanities workshop, and it's called the Penn Ghost Project, but it is, if you see up here in the address, it's the upenn.edu. So it is sponsored by, made by the University of Pennsylvania. So then here on the home page, it kind of just lets you know that University of Pennsylvania has become a center for research on ghosts, and it talks about that studies that consistently show that large percentage of people in Japan, Brazil, South Africa, the United States, India, France, the Philippines, Russia, Thailand, and many other places believe in ghosts or claim to have felt a presence. And it says, like, why would people continue to create literature, art, ritual, film about menacing specters? So it says that what they're doing here is we've got a group of scholars from diverse disciplinary backgrounds. So we have our mixture here, right? Our mixture of areas of expertise. We got literature, art history, nursing, archaeology, religious studies, history of science and medicine, to take research on ghosts seriously. And so it says it's not to prove that they exist, but to show through these diverse explorations into history, literature, religious studies, care, medicine, that ghosts are not simply entities that haunt us, but have been and continue to be economic, social, and medical allies in many different cultures. They're not something to be feared, but to be befriended. And it says that this will focus on ghosts, healing, healthcare, and they want to work closely with the Penn Humanities Forum. So anyways, I like a few different things about this site. One, under publications, if you were to want to do any kind of research on this topic, they've got it here by year. they've got these scholarly articles. So I thought this was almost like, the ghost version of Project Muse. And you can just come here and look it up by year, even going all the way back to 1876. And we've got something here written by the Journal of the Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. So I thought that was pretty interesting that we have these all these articles to choose from if we were interested in looking this up more and doing more research. Also on the classes, I thought it was interesting to see that there was a class, Gods, Ghosts, and Monsters, and you can click on that, offered in the fall of 2013. And then the people, if you wanted to see or get a hold of any of, sorry, my alarm is going off to pick my kids up from school. If you wanted to contact some of the people that worked on this, some of them have their email addresses here. And then the most interesting thing I like about this site is the links. And the links, look at all these different links that we have. And a lot of these sites are super cool as well. So one that I liked was, let's see, sorry, there are so many that it's hard to find them all. Let's see, Hauntings Research. This was a cool site. On this, you have some videos that you can watch. Here's like a documentary movie DVD that they made about a haunting in a 223-year-old mansion. And then there's, I think under the photographs is where it actually takes you to a link for some videos. Well, here are some photographs though. They also have some videos on here somewhere. It will take you to a YouTube page. If I can find where I saw that. Yes. So then here we have, there's 10-minute video, 7-minute video. So you have these videos of this haunting research on this link. But there was another link that I wanted to show you guys. And it was something about like urban legend type things. Here it is, American Folklore on Ghosts. This site I thought was also very cool. You can choose, United States, folklore, Mexican, Canadian. So you can click on these. You've got Native American, African American, Asian American, European American, Latin American. And I clicked on United States and Texas. And then you've got a list here of different stories. And then you can click and read more about them. So I thought this was a kind of neat site. I clicked on African American as well. And here are some different stories that you can read about. So, basically this first site, this UPenn website, I feel like just kind of is a good window into all these other really cool projects as well. You can click on, I've clicked on several of these, and I think there was one about New Jersey. I can't remember which one of these. I don't think it was this one. Maybe it was the other one. But kind of all these are interesting sites, I felt like. I don't remember which one. I clicked on so many. So anyways, I recommend it if you have time, if you're interested. if you want to just start here at the Pin Ghost Project and go to links, and then you can check these out. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Lonnie. For one of my husband and I don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but we're sort of interested in ghost culture. We went to a haunted house or haunted hotel, supposedly. They've got ghost hunters and out there and everything for a honeymoon. Or not honeymoon. We didn't do our honeymoon there, but we did an anniversary there. And the town was full of antique shops and ghost tours, and we wanted a ghost tour with a bunch of bikers. There were so many bikers at these haunted hotels. I don't know why. And my favorite part is it's a small town, Jefferson, Texas. It's a charming little Texas. Have you been there?
Yeah, it's great.
Do you stay at the hotel?
We did stay there.
Yeah.
We just walked through.
So at towards the end of the tour, these bikers in their full outfits of cute things, she'll tell stories about, room 222 or something like that. And you have any questions? Yeah, somebody changed rooms with me. I'm in 222, says this guy all in leather. At the end of the night, there was a golf cart with a cop on it that had the spotlight. And I don't know what they're doing, but I found out what they were doing because I saw two leather-clad bikers on the ground looking under a car. There was a cat. The cops were trying to get a cat, and this tough guy was down there going, "Here, kitty." so fun. Oh, so okay, so that was important for me to tell you. Let's go ahead and do some rhetorical précis then. Who has one?
I have one of those, but I realized I put it in the wrong spot.
That's okay.
So it is in Zotero, and it's under my name again, and it's the meaningful interactions in web-based learning. I'm opening it from my end.
Okay.
So Yang-Hien Wu and Thomas Reeves in the journal article Meaningful Interaction in Web-Based Learning, a Social Constructivist Interpretation, explores the concept of meaningful learning in a digital environment. Wu and Reeves first compared the definitions of online interactions and then described the definition of meaningful learning by referencing multiple peer-reviewed sources on the topic. The purpose is to challenge learning in the digital age in order to extend and better support students and educators in the social and technical needs of each. The authors write in a formal tone for educators and instructional technology specialists.
Okay. Was that one, what was that from? Was that from our Doing Digital Humanities book?
No, it wasn't. It was actually in research of looking for digital humanities projects, I stumbled across this article that I thought would be great for mine and Katie's project.
Okay.
And come to find out, it won't be perfect for our project, but I really, when I was reading the article, I was thinking it's perfect for what the framework of our class is actually about, and that is learning in the 21st century. And so, especially as we are a dual modality class, the article actually discusses what meaningful learning would look like if you are interacting with someone. And so one definition says that if you can take a learning and show it somehow and have a project or a product, then you've learned something. And they said it extends beyond just social conversation. And so if we're looking at, this is what made me think it would be great for mine and Katie's project. If you look at social media, can that be a meaningful learning opportunity and meaningful learning environment? And according to their definition, if you can take something and then turn around and create a product or a project with it, then you've learned something. And that is the digital platform.
That's excellent. So, I might not have been clear here. We had been. Oh no, that's right. Week 9. Never mind. You're fine. I'm like, why aren't you pulling from digital humanities, doing digital humanities? Okay, never mind. Katie, are you presenting from last week or this week? This one. Okay. All right.
I'm group 1.
Thank you, Tamara. Katie.
Yeah, I'm group 1.
Perfect.
Okay, so it's on Zotero if you want to pull it up, but I haven't pulled up on my blog, so either way.
Oh.
Okay, so I did from chapter, oh gosh, I don't even know. Oh, chapter 17. from doing digital humanities. That part 3, I think. So I said, in his article, Augmented Reality is part of doing digital humanities, Marcus Wust, maybe, presents sounds good, right? Presents the idea that augmented reality can be a useful addition to the toolbox of digital humanities, which can be used to enrich their research, teaching, and outreach. He supports his claim by providing examples of augmented reality tools which can be used for just these purposes in a DH environment. The author's purpose is to encourage those interested in DH to find new and innovative ways of augmenting the humanities in order to further their understanding of their subjects of study. He writes using a formal tone in order to educate students and professors of the digital humanities that may be interested in utilizing this tool. So essentially, this whole chapter was about augmented reality, and it was cool because, sorry, I'm talking really fast. It was cool because he gave different examples of augmented reality, or AR. So it said, in my little presentation part, I said, it makes sense that like technology associated with blurring the lines between the real world and the digital world would fall into the study of digital humanities. But because it's so new, there could be some hesitation in using it as part of your like research, like relying on it as a research tool. So they looked at different AR tools. He talked about from like Terminator 2, like the digital visual overlays where he has the like helmet thingy on. But so he's seeing like what's actually in front of him, but on top of that is the like other info that is, created by the technology. And really, I just think that's funny or I think that's interesting because obviously Terminator 2 is not from, I don't know, recently. I don't know when it came out. I guess I could have. Oh, actually, I do know when that came out. I did know when that came out, and evidently I deleted it. But that Google Glasses or whatever that was called, wasn't it Google Glasses or Google Goggles?
Glass, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so it was like real world, like it really came to life. And
kind of like the Terminator. Huh.
Yes. But I think, I know there's definitely issues with that, partially because it's, a invasion of privacy, maybe not super legal. But it like actually creates a new type of vision. It creates a whole new like layer of what is real around us or whatever. So I thought that was really interesting. They also talked about like, what else? Oh, that a lot of the technology is still in early versions. So it, there's still obviously a lot to experiment with. But they really just talked about like the benefits of using augmented reality as a tool for digital humanities.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
That's just such a neat way to think about AR. I never thought about the Terminator.
Yeah, right?
That's your first problem. I always think about
Oh, God, I always think of Terminator, right? Especially Terminator 2. Yeah.
Always start there and then go.
Extrapolate everything else from your life into your life. Yeah, that's good. All right. Any questions for Katie? No? You have one?
but it's from week 9.
Let's table that if it's week 9, just because so we can get to the other. But yeah, don't forget though.
Sure.
Okay, Dan.
I've got one. I forgot to put it under Zotero.
Okay, that's okay. I can go to your folder.
Blog.
Oh, your blog. Let's see.
I tried to add it just now.
That's okay. Let's see. Where did I put the blog addresses? Okay, here we go. This will only take a few clicks. I just, in my mind, do you remember that damn Daniel thing? I don't know why that came to my mind. Okay, so is this the one? No, this isn't it.
It's further down. Not that one, because
there we go, this one.
Yeah. So mine's from doing digital humanities, and I chose from part 1, and this is Alex Guile and Alika Ortega, I guess. They describe the purpose of a social or a special interest group called Global Outlook Digital Humanities, or GoDH. in their article, Global Outlooks in Digital Humanities, Multilingual Practice and Minimal Computing. The authors begin by describing first the origins and ethos of the special interest group. They argue in part for the need for a community of translators for digital humanities because digital humanities is and has been widely practiced around the world in manners that had not been properly recognized until recently. One way to help with translation at digital humanities conferences and for digital humanities papers is to use something they call digital humanities whisperers and a translation toolkit to help foster local global communication to members in the digital humanities community. The authors recognize the dominance of English in the digital humanities communities, but argued for the use of multilingualism as a way to bridge divides between communities and as a way to promote inclusive practices. A second point that the authors explain is minimal computing. Giles and Alika describe this as minimal computing is the application of minimalist principles to computing. There is, however, a catch-22 component in that in order to apply minimalist principles, one must understand computing well to a certain degree. The authors also argue for the need to develop and renew the analog while learning the digital computing practices. Overall, the authors are arguing for a community of digital humanities scholarship that values inclusive practices such as multilingualism. The authors write in an academic tone for scholars in digital humanities field.
Excellent. Did you get a lot out of this, or was it okay?
I kind of got a lot. I thought it was interesting, that thinking about digital humanities projects and papers and conferences in other languages and countries, because I've thought about what if I could go to a conference in Japan or something?
What if?
Wait, can I speak Japanese?
Well,
Do that?
yeah, that's kind of a high bar to have to pass.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting that that there was one example they gave where they had these badges for participants at conferences that were competent in certain languages, so that they could translate what was going on, and so they would they were the whisperers. They would
Oh, that's cool.
Language. Yeah. And so some of the languages were like Japanese, Russian, French. I think Japanese was the only one that they mentioned that was from Asia there, but yeah, they had these badges that said they were competent in these languages. So.
I love whispering. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so I've got some things that I want to tell you about post-colonialism, just to kind of set the stage. I know you guys have done some reading. I won't talk long because I want us to spend a little time talking about a couple of digital humanities projects that she cites. We'll probably just get part of that discussion done today, and then we'll finish it up next time with the bulk of probably our time together spent in addition to our presentations. You guys, I'm really eager to hear about your experiences with these digital tools and what you think about them. So, okay, so the term post-colonialism, you've probably heard it before, you may know it pretty well, but let me just break it down to its bones, because she doesn't quite do that until later. And so colonization is the process by which central system of power dominates the surrounding land and its components. And so post-colonial is technically occurring or existing after the end of colonial rule, but there's a lot of mess that happens after colonialism, and there's a lot of Western dominance over everyone else that kind of hits. So in this book, New World, New Digital Worlds, Post-Colonial Digital Humanities in Theory, Praxis, and Pedagogy, she's talking about post-colonial studies rather than specifically and literally post-colonial. That's academic study of the cultural legacy of colonialism and imperialism. That is the taking over of other, like the British Empire. What does it do to the African nations that they decided to rule, or this country that they decided to rule by throwing out and killing the people who already lived here, because there's always people who always lived these places for the people who come to colonize. So post-colonial states looks at the human consequences of the control and exploitation of colonized people and their lands. So this is a really subtle
and I just think it's so useful. It's a recent current affairs article. I mean, they're always really soft-handed with their radical leftism, but he says, this is a quick reminder of why colonialism was bad. And he actually wrote this article because somebody wrote a book that said colonialism was pretty good in a lot of ways. Some good stuff happened. I mean, I don't know what they argued, but his piece is interesting. He says, this is how he begins, perhaps the easiest way to understand why colonialism was so horrific is to imagine it happening in your own country now. It is invaded, conquered, and occupied by a foreign power. Existing governing institutions are dismantled and replaced by absolute rule of the colonizers. A strict hierarchy separates the colonized and the colonizer. You are treated as an inconvenient subhuman who can be abused at will. The colonists commit crimes with impunity against your people. Efforts at resistance are met with brutal reprisal, sometimes massacre, often that. The more vividly and accurately you manage to conjure what this scenario would actually look like, the more horrified you will be by the very idea of colonialism. He goes on to say, ignoring or downplaying colonial atrocities is the moral equivalent of Holocaust denial. So, mincing words there. Post-colonialism, then, as I said, considers the ways in which Western colonizers controlling the colonized, what happens, the effects of this control, and the mechanisms of their resistance. So the British Empire is like the most classic example. I mean, we can look, if we want to, at ancient Greece as well. They colonized, of course, many places, as I said, America being one of them, by murdering the people already here, taking their land and forcing everyone into these tiny parcels, who's left into these tiny parcels of land. And so, yeah, the indigenous people in America have been literally colonized. And there are also, tons of, the British Empire was huge. India is a major one, Honduras, Barbados, Jamaica, and then just about every other African country. And so one concrete effect of colonization is obviously slavery. They colonized African countries, and then after forcing their people and from their families, killing some, closing down schools, burning their culture, shackling them, putting them on a ship and down their cargo, and they're imported into another country as goods and services to be sold, and then they cultivate this land as a British colony that would eventually gain their independence, and then the complications that come from that. So specifically, post-colonial critics are concerned with colonial powers, works produced by those who are colonized. Post-colonial theory looks at issues of power, economics, politics, religion, and culture, and specifically how these elements work in relation to colonial hegemony, that is, Western colonizers controlling the colonized. So for example, a post-colonial critic might look at the works, something like Robinson Crusoe. So you can look at works that are not by colonized people, but a post-colonial reading of existing text. So that maybe in Robinson Crusoe, where the colonial ideology is manifest in Crusoe's colonist attitude toward the land upon which he's shipwrecked and toward the black men he colonizes named Friday. Post-colonial criticism also takes the form of literature composed by authors that critique Eurocentric hegemony. So seminal post-colonial writers you probably have heard of, like Chinua Achebe, who wrote Things Fall Apart, and the Kenyan author Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Both of them have written stories that recount the suffering of colonized people. So, for example, in Achebe's Things Fall Apart, he's looking at the strife and devastation that occurred when British colonists began moving inland from the Nigerian coast. So, rather than glorifying in that book, rather than glorifying the nature of European colonists, which is something that we do like in our celebration of Columbus Day, for example, as they expand their sphere of influence, Achebe narrates the destructive events that led to the death and enslavement of thousands of Nigerians when the British imposed their imperial government. So in turn, Achebe points out the negative effects, the shifting ideas of identity and culture caused by the imposition of Western religion and economics on Nigerians during colonial rule. So not only are they oppressed, their history is ripped from them, and because they're in situations where, for example, in America, where it was against the law, or it was against a lot of the indigenous people were sent to boarding schools, their children were, and it was against the rules for them to speak the languages. A lot of languages broke down, and because of the persistent oppression, there becomes this thing, the double consciousness that W.B. Du Bois talks about, that where you're internally oppressed as well as being oppressed by the society. So that's a post-colonial perspective. It's a contested term in some ways, in many ways, depending on who you're talking to. It's not contested here, but here's a little background. It's seen by some as a temporal category, that is, it exists in time. The Middle East was controlled by empires until the 20th century, for example. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, they were often European empires, and throughout the 20th century, colonial rule crumbled and various post-colonial states emerged. So in that sense, they're post-colonial simply because they emerged from the colonial empires. And so but then the next term of post-colonialism is sometimes used to describe a certain type of state and certain type of politics. That is, the states that emerged out of these. So post-colonial, it doesn't mean the colonizing effects have ended. It means that it's still there. So they've emerged out of colonial empires in the Middle East, and were often inherited by the colonial institutions that were in place. They were just those institutions that are in place in these previously colonized countries were designed by colonial powers to control the populations from above. In other words, they're designed to protect the state from its people rather than to protect it from outside militaries. And so that many have argued that these institutions continue to perform that same function after the fall of colonial empires. So they're gone, they've got their freedom, but the institutions have been built by the people who were empowered and were designed to oppress them, so they continue to oppress, and getting one's own culture up, because, what the hell does one's own culture mean? Is just, it's been devastating. In our case, it's difficult to put together one's culture because everybody's dead, and in African countries it's difficult because many of these people have been stolen and put into bondage. So they've forgotten their own languages because they were tied together in ships and with people who were different tribes. So they couldn't even speak to one another, which is another way to oppress. And so back to this idea of post-colonialism as a critique, which is what is being done in New Digital Worlds. So the proponents of this type of post-colonial analysis argue that the pillars of what we think of as modernity, and this ties to what I said before, liberalism, free market, secularism, are not rational concepts that are resulted from logical or scientific deliberations, that these are not unmarked, unpoliticized things, but they're all social constructions that developed out of popular Western, often Christian experiences, and that may or may not be relevant, but it's important for us to think about that. So modernity, therefore, is what's often coded as Western, and imperial powers have imposed the Western ways of thought associated with it as the Middle East. And even the way we see the map, the fact that it's oriented so that Europe is central and North America is central, and everything is sort of populated around here. That's a colonizing aspect. We were in control of the map, so we're putting ourselves up front and center. So she talks about she's interested in the cultural artifacts of the global South. And the global South is this part right here, Brazil, Africa. These are the global South can be, you can think of that as parallel with what we used to call third world, developing countries. These are countries that have been colonized, that have complex economic structures that are typically still ruled under dictatorial kind of governments. And here's a little breakdown. In the global north, living conditions are high due to high wealth, and that's this top half. And in the reds, living conditions are low due to low wealth. So, so that leads us to, let me see, I don't want to say anything about, the global South has been employed in a post-national sense to address spaces and peoples negatively impacted by contemporary capitalist globalism. In other words, people colonized by the colonizers, like the British Empire. So, as I said, her goal is to capture a digital cultural record of the global South. And the example that she offers is actually
less a project than it is an event. She's talking about an event that was designed to help the people of Puerto Rico who were with after the Hurricane Maria. Interestingly, in terms of post-colonialism, Puerto Rico is a colony, and a lot of the things that they post-colonial reading of what happened in that entire experiences has a lot to teach us. But this is a post-colonial project, she argues, because it is a post-colonial critique of the world, but it doesn't stop at critique. It's actually designed to intervene in what's happening. So because it's a colony, according to this logic, that's part of why the resources that went were so limited, the ones that went to Puerto Rico versus the ones that went to Houston around the same time. But also part of it was the infrastructure of Puerto Rico, which was a mess. There was no map. We didn't know where anything was. So part of what they were doing is a mapping project, and it was a mapping project that was done in like a hack group. I mean, this is the Facebook post for it. Puerto Rico Mapathon for hurricane relief. This is a digital humanities project. Come help with relief efforts on the ground in Puerto Rico by contributing your time to open source mapping. Following the recent hurricane, people around the world are using the OpenStreetMap platform to give their time to hurricane relief workers' efforts. So basically, they're crowdsourcing data to create maps so that people can find out where people are and get to them, and so they can get the resources to them. So the Red Cross in Puerto Rico has requested 2 tasks that can help with their relief efforts. During the Mapathon, we will teach people how to help these efforts through mapping, and we will map together. No mapping experience necessary, no knowledge of local terrain is necessary. Come anytime during the afternoon. Please bring your laptop and RSVP. So this happened at Columbia. This is a digital humanities tool that they used, an open source one, and here's we won't watch all of this, but here's how it works.
Learning to map in OpenStreetMap. Introduction. The MapGive campaign gives you an understanding of why open map data is important to people all over the world and why you should invest your time to help create map data online through openstreetmap.org and the OpenStreetMap Tasking Manager. The places most in need of open map data creation may be places that you've never been to. That's okay. You can make a big difference simply by tracing roads, buildings, and other features that you can spot easily from satellite imagery. In this video tutorial, we'll show you how to map in OpenStreetMap so you can start creating open map data. Pause this video whenever you need to and practice what you've just learned. You can also find written how-to instructions under Step 2 on the MapGive Learn to Map page. Before you begin learning how to map, please make sure you have set up an OpenStreetMap account. You can find instructions on how to do that in Step 1 on the MapGive Learn to Map page. If you have not signed up for an OpenStreetMap account yet, please pause this video now and do so. Then return here to continue the tutorial. Once you've set up your OpenStreetMap account, the fun can really begin. You are about to learn the 3 main things you can map in OpenStreetMap: points, used to mark places; lines, used to mark roads and paths; and areas, used to mark outlines of buildings, fields, or any other large area. As you'll soon see, mapping is easy, and you can do it from anywhere in the world, even in places that you've never been to. In our next steps, we'll look at OpenStreetMap and become more familiar with it. You can pause this video at any point to review and practice what you learn along the way. Overview of OpenStreetMap. To begin, you will log into OpenStreetMap. Once logged in, you will see the map. To the right of the map are the map controls. You can zoom in, zoom out, and view your current location on the map. You can also select between layers, view the map key, share the map, or make comments on a particular section. Pause this video, log in, and take a moment to locate these features of OpenStreetMap. Then return here to learn to search and zoom in and out in OpenStreetMap. Searching OpenStreetMap is easy.
So another digital tool for you to play with if you want to. And just a little bit of detail about what was going on. So this is an article written October 2017, beginning 3 weeks after Hurricane Maria hit. They say it's still in a pretty grim state. Fewer than 15% of residents have power, and much of the island has no clean drinking water. Delivery of food and other necessities, especially to remote areas, has been hampered by a variety of ills, including a lack of cellular service, washed out roads, additional rainfall, and what analysts and Puerto Ricans say is a slow and insufficient response from the U.S. government. Another issue slowing recovery, maps or lack thereof. While pre-Maria maps of Puerto Rico were fairly complete, their level of detail was nowhere near that of the other parts of the United States. Platforms such as Google Maps are more comprehensive on the mainland than on the island. This is in part due to financial considerations. While most map data comes from the government or other open data sources, map providers like Google invest in supplementing or correcting that data. These providers, which sell maps to advertisers as a navigation devices, often choose to invest in areas with more economic activity, which makes sense, right? I mean, so this is the problem of colonialism, is that it continues to oppress because that's the way the system works. And anyway, so the lack of detail impedes recovery efforts. Without information on the location of buildings, for example, rescuers don't know how many people were living in an area before the hurricane struck, and so how much aid is needed. So this is crowdsourcing of maps. Again, in Digital Humanities is an event rather than a project. So this is the Mapathon in Colombia, in which volunteers examined satellite images of Puerto Rico and added missing buildings, roads, bridges, and other landmarks in an open source platform, OpenStreetMap. And several other universities are doing similar stuff. And so they collaborated with Humanitarian Open Map Team, or HOT, which is a nonprofit that works to create crowdsourced maps for aid and development work. I mean, that's why it exists. This is a post-colonial project. This is an example of a more clear example of what's called critical digital humanities. These are social justice oriented projects like the Mapping Islamophobia project that I showed you guys at the beginning of the semester. There were volunteers. There are other crisis mapping projects is what this is. The first one was the one that occurred in 2010 after the Haiti earthquake. Again, Haiti being a colony that really poor, and then just ravaged with these natural disasters. And we don't have maps of them, and we don't know how to get to them. And again, the same problem. The resources like Google Maps follow where the money is, because that's how they're funded. Then that means that where there isn't money, they're not going to get there. So anyway, so we put data into mobile applications as well while they were there that allowed us to have offline maps, which were key as cellular service is sparse. So there's one example. The other one that I'd like to show you and talk about is this Livingstone Online Enrichment Access Project. This one she suggests as an exemplar of what these kinds of projects can be, illuminating imperial exploration. So this is an explorer who did, and it's a trove of travel writing, which is common for explorers, what we would call explorers, who are visiting new places. Lewis and Clark, Christopher Columbus again. But what this does, well, let me just I'll have them say it. It describes some of the key. Okay, whoops, that's the thing that does that. Where's the thing that I'm going to tell you guys about? Okay, why should we read Livingstone's manuscripts? It's important as an imperial travel writer, one that is part of the global north colonizing the global south by
finding out what's there and then coming back and telling the people who have some resources that there's cool stuff there that we should go get. And then what we're up against, and then they bring the armies, and then they take the stuff. So what was I reading? Okay, the topics that he covers in his writings are important. The geographical extent of his travels, the potential of his manuscripts to inform research in many disciplines, and the overall importance of Livingston's manuscripts for understanding both 19th century and contemporary global events. One of the things that makes this project so important is that we can't boil this down to good guys and bad guys, right? Humans are humans are humans. You know, he was doing something that the country needed. He wasn't like, oh, I hate these people, let me just go take their subhumans. It's just the system trampled on them. And he is a powerful player in that. But what would happen when she's talking about the record of the global South, the cultural record of the global South, this is about the global South because he's going there, he's exploring it. But it is from the perspective of someone who's looking to find ways to help his people conquer those people, not because he thinks those people are need to be conquered, but because the system of money that flows suggests that in order to maintain power, we have to get more land. That's just the way it works. And so, it is not, if we just took his writings and and read them as writings of an explorer, as travel writings. If we do that, then we're continuing to use. And she says digital humanities is just as complicit in this. We're continuing to use our humanities content as ways to further marginalize these people, because if from his perspective, he's not looking at their lives there. He's looking at them as chattel to get out of the way. He's looking for the stuff that would have some value there. He's not looking for the art that they've created. He's not listening to the languages that they've created. He's not trying to understand the stories of the people there. It is from the perspective of somebody who's coming there to conquer. So the way that she says that this is a good example of post-colonial digital humanities is that they read this not as a good guy, bad guy thing, but they read this in a way that includes the perspective of the global South, the one that is being colonized. So the text is what he wrote, but the reading is one that is post-colonial reading that helps readers understand the ways in which these manuscripts work to further make heroic the Western way and celebrate that, and then and condemn others. So it's a way to bring forward nuance. Let me check my notes and then oh good heavens, I got carried away. I'll just do this one question. So just to set the context, in the 80s, there was a heavy push towards bringing in writers of color, writers from, African nations, from places that are not represented in British literature or American literature in the, great white male kind of canon, but not canonical ones. And so we see people like Alice Walker come in and so forth. And then we end up with the Norton Anthology of African American Literature. Then we end up with the Norton Anthology of Women's Literature. And I'm teaching women writers class right now that sort of falls within that category, that we don't have these people represented, so let's represent them. But there's some difficulties with representation because it's sort of additive in that what does Risen say is, we have a lot of examples of representing literature that is not represented what does she suggest is problematic about representation? Let me table that question because I can't ask it well. What are your thoughts about these two projects? We have one that went on, this one has been going on since the 70s. Then it was developed into a digital humanities project. It didn't begin as one. It's this repository of incredible writings that they've been working on for a long time. The other one is a digital humanities project as an event. So given what we've read thus far, what is she saying about digital humanities that has been said before? What is she saying about digital humanities that has not been said before? What's your takeaway here? Anything? Yeah.
A spin on an old thing, but in a context that finally made sense to me. She talks about the difficulty with the definition, right? We've been talking about it all semester. Yeah. But finally, she said the difficulty in Latin America, Mexico, I think specifically, but what we would consider the global South, if there is no definition, they can't get funding.
Yeah, no,
like, full stop. Like we talk about, and articles have talked about how difficult it is. It's like a side job. It can be, even the people we were looking for here, it was rhetoric composition, but also digital humanity. It wasn't a digital humanities thing. That's as close as we can get in the global north. But go down to Mexico, go to South America, and if you can't say this is what digital humanities is, then the same way you can say this is what physics encompasses, you full stop can't get any money. So to extrapolate from there, could never take off the same way, I mean, because they don't have the access. And right now you can do a real live demo. We can speculate what our projects are going to look like. We could even, if we had the time or a friend who knew the coding, even put together like a mock-up. If they don't have the access to the computer lab, and just by virtue of having less money, it can't take off there as a discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the joy of privilege. Yeah, very good point. And that really struck home for me too, because I was, it is a luxury, as she points out. I had never considered it before, but it's a luxury for us to not have nailed down a definition. There are consequences.
I think for this particular, like the one that's on the screen right now, kind of like Tamara's presentation today, where you're looking at information that you may or may not have already known, but in a different way, through the like what's on the screen, through the field diaries, through the letters, through the manuscripts, and it kind of makes it maybe more real as a record of history, rather than just like reading about it. You're seeing these elements in a way that you may not have before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm feeling really like stupid because as I'm reading about post-colonialism, I'm thinking that it's talking about like virtual colonialism of like.
We got to talk. You got it.
Okay, so like not necessarily literal, but so that's right. You're saying that's not totally off base.
That's part of it for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unpack again. What's your understanding of that virtual colonization?
Well, basically that we're not at the beginning stages anymore. Now we're dealing with like how it all falls in line, like after, a civil war happens after you colonize a place or something. Like now we're trying to clean up the mess that's been created by a colonization. That's why it's post-colonial and in the digital spectrum, trying to make sense of everything. And just, again, this reminds me, and it goes back to, as an adjunct professor, they give you this gigantic world literature book. It's called World Literature. And I'm over here trying to pick and choose the best things from this giant book that, I'm going to be teaching a fourth of it maybe. And I'm trying to divide it into, okay, we're going to do, of course, men, but we've got to get all the women authors out there. And then I'm trying to divide it into different parts of the world and make sure and here I am like, oh, Germany and France, they're real diverse from each other. Still even today, we're putting out literature that it's not the world. I mean, there's barely anything from Asia in it, you know, like where it is. I mean, she's right that there's like definitely a balance issue there with, does that make sense?
It does. You just did a post-colonial reading of digital humanities and a post-colonial reading of the damn world literature book. So bravo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Abigail? You have some thoughts?
I'm just kind of soaking it all in. My dad's a historian, so I'm used to hearing about history and the different things that all came together around the same time. And I'm trying to piece together that with the maps and everything that I've seen.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's why with Jennifer.
Yes, Jennifer.
That's why my last blog post in progress, I had to stop because I was on the verge of just getting so carried away with it, because not from this reading, but the previous one, it was the online journal you told us to read. It was like 6 articles, a special edition. And it was an article I think someone had mentioned before about the archives, the Native American archives and the wampum belts. And there was no discussion of, it was just their culture being archived it's as a colonial act.
That's
in its motion, right? To do it is to take it again out of what they would want to do, right? And then, so the debate about who has the servers, right, is just so off the mark, because you're doing it again if you go in and you take things of an oral tradition or that have been segregated to a medicine kind of hierarchy. Certain people know the history of the culture in this physical object, and now you want to digitize it. You're doing it again.
And you're doing, and I think that's the final thing I want to end with, because what you said, Jennifer, and what you just said, Brian, those are two of the reasons that she says representation is inadequate, because it's like, it's tokenism at that point. And that doesn't change things.
You're collecting and categorizing things, and it's like you're making it to where it's no longer living too.
Oh!
Too, right? So,
did you guys hear that?
So yeah, collecting and categorizing, like, you know, so the literature or the cultural, you know, thing, the object becomes, you know, no longer a living piece. It's like it's dead, right? It's collected, saving it, we're storing it away.
Right. We're separating it from the context, like the wampum belt, like the literature of the world that's now brought together, and look, we fixed it. So, and then, but we still have to make choices. We have 15 weeks. I mean, what are they supposed to have definitely read? There's reality. And so she's saying the questions that you guys are asking right now are the ones that digital humanists have not necessarily been asking. And that we have a entire field where they've been saying for a long time, this is the open, we can just, none of the racism and hate and oppression that has shackled us for so long is on the internet. They don't say that anymore. But they used to say that. This is a blank slate. We can just remake the world here. And she's saying, whoa, let's remember who made this space. Let's remember who is, you know, and she does take us to task with, you know, some of the early projects are, you know, the Walt Whitman Archive, which is a good project. That's not to take these down. And she's saying two things. Representation's not enough, but the search and destroy version is not either. She does not want Walt Whitman Archive to go away. She just wants a richer reading, the living context of it. She wants it to be not decontextualized. If we're going to look at Walt Whitman's writings, let's look at them within the context of other writings that were happening at that time, events that were happening that were not specifically related to his life or the lives of people who were in his economic strata, who had the access to the material things that he did, who were speaking his language, who
who were even in this country. You know, what else was happening? So that's, again, coming back to this in my final word, this is why this is such an extraordinary example, is because it's contextualized. It's not just his writings, like these are some cool writings, here's some things that we learned. They're looking at this is his representation, here's what's happening on the ground, here's some other events that are happening that help inform this particular reading. This is where he's coming from in terms of the reading. This is not a search and destroy. A search and destroy thing would be that this imperialist who did this exploration would be, well, we just take that writing and throw it in the trash because it's got no merit. That's not what that's the opposite of what she's saying needs to happen as well. So she wouldn't say take that world history book and tear out all the damn white guys. She would say let's bring the global North reading with the global South reading and just see what we learn. Let's complicate the hell out of it. And you know what? Digital humanities is really well suited for that because we can layer and look over time. I mean, what Tamara was showing with that map, where we can see the differences over time about, you know, the voters, and we can look at the red line districts and how that changes over time. Those can be read in terms of post-colonialism, because this was eventually a colony, but this is also built on the backs of colonized people who were brought over and then built the economy on their backs. And also because we colonized the people who were here and continue to go from that. So off my soapbox, settling down. I will see you guys next week. I look forward to hearing about how your projects or how your tools go. So thank you guys.